I think that some of the obstacles can come from some very surprising and quite mundane, practical, operational kind of sources. Taking the hall as an example, we obviously have a very broad and eclectic range of different acts. These days, in order to try and take what we do outside of the physical environment of the hall, it involves an awful lot more use of outside broadcast vehicles, radio, television, and at the moment, problems, Radio 3 on BBC all the time. And we can have some real practical difficulties in very simple things like trying to find somewhere to actually put outside broadcast vehicles, and having quite a lot of difficulty with sometimes highways when we're trying to run live events and take them outside the physical environment of the hall. So it's probably not so much from the actual planning bit, but it's from some of the operational bits that affect us on a day-to-day level. The OB vehicles aren't things that bring noise or disruption. It's just physically they've got to go somewhere, and they need to have satellite links, so they need a bit of sky that they can see. And sometimes it's the really mundane stuff that can cause problems.
I think I'd echo that. We're I guess, the youngest cultural cluster to be formed. So we're just at the point now where we're starting to think about what we might do as far as programming in the public realm is concerned. And we've already had conversations with Exhibition Road about what challenges they've faced. And so, in a sense, we're kind of anticipating, in a way, a lot of those similar challenges. And certainly the other area that we're looking at is signage and wayfinding that, in some ways, we seem to be making some kind of headway on. But again, in terms of really getting maybe some joined-up thinking there in terms of how Westminster works with, say, the Mayor's office in order to kind of really make that stuff happen. But again, there seems to be a bit of a disconnect.
William. Just to go back to the Theatre Museum, as someone who sat as a member of the Theatre Museum Committee for the V&A, and it was really the swinging budget cut at the V&A that killed off the Theatre Museum, not the attendance. Actually, it was actually doing quite well attendance-wise. But that wasn't my point. I just thought I'd give you that for nothing. Just throw it in. I wanted to just say that I think this lady in the front here used the word perception, and I think one of the biggest challenges that we face is the perception of the West End as not safe. And we've done audience surveys, and there's lots of people who will only really want to be there during the day now. They don't want to be in the West End in the evening because they perceive it to be unsafe. And I think it is partly true, but I think it's more about perception.
It is, on crime figure terms, it is wholly about perception.
That's right. But I don't think that message is getting across. And as someone who comes from Glasgow, who was, there for the European City of Culture, which was a bit of a turnaround for us, perception is everything. And I think there needs to be a concentration on how that is going to be achieved.
Yep, I have a particular project at the moment aimed at tackling crime, disorder and perception, particularly around Soho and the drugs market, which I know around Theatreland causes a lot of distress to families, and it's the perception of it rather than the reality, but we're looking at that, I understand that. Valentine, who's our arts officer, and then Christine.
This is a point to add on empty shops. This is an example that we've just done with the street pianos project. The council did waive rent to turn empty shops on Broadwick Street, Church Street, and also Fernwood Road into piano galleries and for artists to paint the pianos and invite people to play the piano. And in Prince of Wales Junction, well, it was called Prince of Wales Junction, is now called Maida Hill. It really regenerated the area, and it will stay as a cafe gallery at the moment until it's occupied. So this was a successful example. But perhaps what we as a council needs to consider is sometimes the artist wants to put up a temporary exhibition of as short as 1 week or 2 weeks, but the shop, they might need to apply for change of planning use because it used to be something else other than a shop, and they can't really sell paintings because it used to be a restaurant, for example. But by the time the planning application goes through, the exhibition would have finished. So perhaps we could consider how we can make it more flexible.
Thank you. Christine.
Well, it would be very good to be able to use the empty spaces. I'm also a volunteer in the Chinatown Art Space. We are very small, and we are helping to develop East Asian art and also the artists. If we have a building and then we have to maintain it, that is very difficult for us, of course, and this you don't want to hear. It's all about funding. So it would be very useful to have a list of places that is available, made available to the small organizations that we can use without too much money involved.
Ruth.
Just to say, as one of the councillors for Harrow Road Ward, has been an absolute delight how the street piano project has worked. But it's not been it on its own that's lifted the area. It's been a massive investment in that area. So, and you wouldn't get that everywhere. But what I would say is that any of these kinds of projects needs to be integrated into communications with the surrounding area to make it as effective as it could be. And I hope we're going to be able to keep all of that going.
In terms of the space one is an interesting one, and Graham, I'm going to pick on you for a second. Perhaps as a community arts organisation, do we, as a city council, through planning and availability of space and the use of space, help community arts organisations to flourish?
I think it's possibly been the opposite. There's been quite a few loss of spaces. I mean, the Studio Theatre was one that used to be based at Westminster Community School, and when that school moved site, that space was lost and used to host a lot of fringe performances that a lot of local residents used to access. You also had the Westminster Theatre fairly recently, when it used to be in existence before. A lot of groups used to use it, and now that's pretty much seems to be going down a very commercial route. So, and the Cockpit Theatre, going back even further, that used to be used by residents, and now that's City of Westminster College, so limited access. I think residents don't get the benefit of the cultural offer, certainly not as far as being able to participate or being able to go and see shows.
I think that's a very fair point.